Hello my fellow hollowed hunters, this is the Souls Fanatic, and today I will show you how to make the Longsword from Dark Souls. As always, a list of materials is provided in the video's description below, as well as a link to my Patreon where you can find any templates seen in these videos. Warning, this build will require the use of power tools that can be dangerous. Please take the proper precautions necessary for your tools before you proceed. I am not responsible for any of your actions, so replicate these videos at your own risk. But without any further ado, let's get started. For part 1, we will be cutting out the base from our wood. You will need a plank of wood, your longsword template, a tabletop jigsaw, a few clamps, a yardstick, and a thumbtack. You will also need a marker to trace the template and some clear plastic tape to hold the template in place. We will start by poking holes into our template using the thumbtack. You will aim your tack at all the distinguishing points on the innermost details of the sword. This would include the tip of the fuller, the two sides of the fuller where the fuller begins to curve, the base of the fuller where the blade meets the crossguard, both the top and bottom of the central axis of the crossguard, and 4 points at the inner circle of the pommel. Next, we will move over to the wood. I highly recommend that you tape down your template to help you hold everything into place. Grab your marker and proceed to trace the outside edge of the template onto the wood. Make sure to also mark the holes that we put on the inside of the template. Once the template is on the wood, we will clamp it down to a sturdy table, grab the jigsaw, and begin to cut. Keep your fingers away from the blade, wear some eye guards, and be sure to move any debris away from your feet. Now that we have our base cut out, we want to trace the inner design of the template onto the wooden base. We're going to poke holes into the key points of the design using the tack. Then line up the template and mark both the sides of our wooden base. We'll take our yardstick and connect the dots. With everything sketched on, we can move on to part 2. For part 2, we will be carving the blade. You will need a Dremel, some wood shavers, a variety of chisels, and your hammer, and of course your wooden sword cutout. I start by shaving off the edges of the wood to help give a flat surface to start carving. Make sure you do not shave past the edge guideline. We are trying to capture the angle of the blade, but not go all the way down. Then I clamp down the blade by its handle and tip. Start using the chisel to carve out chunks. Also use a curved chisel to carve out the fuller at the center of the blade. Be careful not to go too deep. I leave about half a centimeter to make sure I don't make a mistake. Then I switch back to the shavers and begin smoothing out and flattening the blade. Make sure to add a taper towards the tip, as a blade is thicker at the base and thinner towards the top. To keep the blade symmetrical, make sure that whatever you remove on one side, you remove on the reverse. I then take the Dremel and clean up any imperfections, while also sharpening the edge to our drawn line. I used a ballpoint Dremel on the edge of the fuller to help sharpen the lines. Be careful not to dig too deep and keep a steady hand. Dremels like to catch and cut into the wood, and will pull away from you if you get lazy. If you do manage to make a few unintentional cuts, don't panic, you can sometimes sand them down or disguise it as battle damage. But with everything smoothed out, we will move on to part 3. For part 3, we will be carving the handle. You will need your template and wooden cutout, some sturdy wooden glue, tabletop jigsaw, some scrap plywood, your wood shavers, a marker, some clamps, and of course, the Dremel. We'll start by increasing the thickness of the wood. Take your template and trace the handle of the template onto the scrap plywood. You will need 2 of these for both sides of your sword handle. Clamp down the pieces to your sturdy table, taking the proper safety precautions, and begin cutting out those pieces. Glue the parts onto each side of the handle and let it sit for a day or 2. Make sure that you clamp the parts together to ensure that the glue sticks firmly. I have these scrap pieces here to be glued to the face of the hilt and pommel. You should cut these to shape before you glue them. However, I do not own a bandsaw and wanted to use some scrap wood so I wasn't wasting any fresh material. Glue the pieces in place using a strong wood glue and clamp them together. Hold them in this position for a day longer than the duration that your wood glue prescribes. I will be waiting 3 days for mine to fully dry. It is important that the glue dries thoroughly, as the force of the Dremel and the carving tools may rip the wood out of place. Then repeat these steps with the pommel. Once the extra plates are firmly in place, I will begin dremeling them into shape. Again, if you cut them to shape before gluing them, you shouldn't have to do this step, but make sure that all the edges align neatly. I will then begin rounding the edges of the handle. For the longsword, its handle starts as an oval shape near the hilt and tapers into a circular shape toward the pommel. The oval shape handle helps keep the blade in line when you're striking the opponent. Make sure to leave the ring ridge protruding from the handle. These help maintain your grip. You want to mark the shape of the hilt and pommel. Unfortunately, I did not make a template for the hilt, so you will have to use your best art skills to try and replicate this arcing diamond shape. I'm using marker, but I definitely recommend that you use a pencil if you're not confident. Make sure that it is centered and symmetrical on both sides. For the pommel, just use the template circular pattern and trace the circle in the center of the pommel. Once we have our guidelines, we can use the Dremel to start shaving away the extra. The hilt is rather straight, just follow the lines. But the pommel will require a little bit of a steady hand to trace the circle with the Dremel. In the future, I would rather try a different method to this step, as the result was not detailed to my liking. Perhaps carving the pommel design before gluing it to the sword would have been a much better idea. For part 4, we will be smoothing the blade and painting it. You will need your carved sword, sandpaper in 80, 160, and 220 grits, silver, gray, and black spray paint. Begin sanding the entire sword with 80 grit sandpaper. The coarse grit will smooth out and remove extra material or cuts. If you want to fix any unfortunate gashes in the wood, use wood filler before sanding it down. This is a long, painful process. Be patient and thorough. If it's not smooth, it will show underneath the paint. Switch to the 160 grit and repeat the full body sanding. Then do it once again with the 220 grit. Now that the sword is smooth, we will begin painting. Make sure that you are in a well-ventilated area where you will not get paint on anything. I will be working outside, which is the best location for this step. I will begin by painting the entire sword black. This ensures that the entire sword is painted, and you can go lighter coats of your other colors without worrying about missing a spot. If the black shows through, it simply looks like shaded depth. I would not call this a good professional strategy, but it works for people like me who suck at painting. I recommend that you paint the handle portion first, wait about 3 hours for it to dry, then paint the blade, waiting another 3 hours. Then once our first layer of black has dried onto the sword, we can add the dark gray to the handle. The Dark Souls longsword is very minimalistic. There weren't any designs or wooden patterns. It simply looked as if it was solid color across the entire handle. If you wish to diversify your color scheme, this would be the time to do so. But I will stick to what was in the game. Cover the edges of the handles with some masking tape, then paint the hilt and the pommel with the silver color. I used a light coat to help distinguish it from the more polished blade. Then use a heavier coat of silver on the blade to give it that shiny metal look. In conclusion, the build turned out pretty good. It is a simple, straightforward wooden sword. However, it is for display only. Do not swing it around or hit anything, or else it will break. This is an older video that was recorded 2 years ago, so I have not incorporated my new technique in making it sturdier. I'm hoping that I can use the wood hardener in my future builds to help give them the strength required to cut objects. But the process is very complicated, so I haven't tested it yet. Like, comment, and subscribe for more builds in the future. Thanks for watching.